Well, it's the biggest story in town. It turns out American President Donald Trump was onto something.
Where are you from?
BBC.
Good. Here's another beauty.
It's a good line. Impartial, free and fair.
Yeah, sure.
Well, that criticism of the BBC and John Sopel, who was talking to there, apparently was well-founded, because the so-called impartial and accurate public service broadcaster is nothing but.
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President...
Because tonight the BBC is facing serious questions over its credibility after the Daily Telegraph exposed a Panorama segment that heavily doctored a speech by the American president in 2021, hours before the infamous January the 6th Capitol riot. As you're about to hear, the corporation spliced together two quotes 1 hour apart to make it seem like he encouraged an insurrection.
They played the following clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell.
But Trump didn't, in fact, say this at all. The BBC spliced together two clips that took place 54 minutes apart. So let's go through it again.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's different. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell.
That is damning stuff. Now, this, of course, is coming from the holier-than-thou BBC that even has its own so-called fact-checking service named BBC Verify that they claim counters disinformation. Oh, the irony. Just take a listen at this embarrassing trailer telling you, licence fee payers, that they are right when everyone else is wrong.
Disinformation. You think you're winning.
There's no climate change.
The more you try to drown out reality, the harder we'll work to verify the facts. We'll be watching. We'll be ready. Because it's the pursuit of truth that gives us our calling. The fight for truth is on.
But this is nothing new to people who've been paying attention. BBC News and Current Affairs is run by champagne socialists and public school kids trying to fit in. Just look at their bias against Brexit. And now they use every opportunity to blame it for our problems. Man-made climate change, not open for discussion. Nigel Farage, they sneer at him and his voters. Well, I think they've taken on more than they can handle because, do you remember this?
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen.
It seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
So Donald Trump sued American network CBS over the doctoring of that Kamala Harris interview during the presidential race, and he won $16 million. Plus, he won $15 million from ABC after one of its presenters said he was liable for rape. So the BBC could be in a spot of bother. Let me know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. And to remind you, the BBC licence fee is set to increase to more than £180, up from its current fee of £174.50. But this is a little reminder of why GB News exists, of course. We are the home of free speech, the People's Channel. We are certainly not fake news. We take our job very seriously, and truth matters. Now, should the president be suing Donald Trump? Let's talk to the associate editor at The Telegraph, Gordon Rayner, who broke this story. Gordon, thank you so much for joining us. We're looking at the front page of the paper there tomorrow. Now, what do you know about what the White House are going to do about this?
Well, Bev, you'll have seen that Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, has tweeted about this. He's said it's fake news, rather predictably. We know that the White House have seen our story, that they are looking at it, and that they're considering their options. Beyond that, I can't tell you more.
Did you talk to the White House before this story ran to let them know this was going to be on the front page of the paper?
No, we contacted them as soon as we put the story online, which was at about 3:30 this afternoon, our time. And as soon as we had put the story up, we put a call into them. They sounded very interested, and they started looking at it then.
And tell me about your reaction when you saw this leaked report. Just tell our viewers who may not be familiar with this story today how you accessed this information and who was it? I mean, I'm not asking for names. I don't want you to betray your sources. But it was somebody within the BBC who felt they had an obligation as a whistleblower to let a newspaper know.
Not quite. So the report that this story came from was written internally for BBC Eyes Only. It was written by a chap called Michael Prescott, who was an independent advisor to the BBC's editorial guidelines and standards committee, so they're the sort of arbiters of impartiality. He had served on that committee for 3 years. He was very unhappy with what he'd seen. He was very unhappy with the bias that he said he'd seen, and with the BBC manager's refusal to do anything about it. So he wrote that report. It was sent to the BBC board. It found its way to the government. It found its way to me. And within that report was this extraordinary piece of information about that Panorama documentary that we're now talking about, something which nobody had really spotted at the time. The chap who wrote this report, Michael Prescott, he had seen the programme and he was very suspicious of it. He thought it didn't seem right. It seemed very biased to him. So he asked for a review of the programme, which then threw up this fact that they had spliced the Trump speech into, they'd taken two parts, put them together, made it seem like he was speaking one fluent sentence, telling people to go to the Capitol and fight. He didn't say that at all. You've actually done President Trump a huge favour here, because he feels very strongly about the way that he's depicted in the media. And actually, you've handed him a smoking gun. Knowing what he's like and knowing how seriously he takes his public image and how frustrated he is by the fake news of the media, what would you expect him to do now? Well, you know him probably better than I do, Bev, but I would imagine that he may well decide to say something on social media. That's what he tends to do first of all. You know, as you say, he is a litigious man. I don't know what his plans are, but I would probably be slightly concerned if I was the BBC that he may be looking at what his options are from a legal standpoint. The BBC, oddly, even when we pointed this out to them and raised it with them, they don't seem to be able to grasp that there's anything wrong here. When it was raised internally, originally, the BBC managers said, well, we edit clips all the time, it's not a problem. The bigger problem for the sort of senior BBC managers is that the chap who wrote this internal memo had raised all this with the most senior people at the BBC, Tim Davie, the Director General, Samir Shah, the chairman. So they knew that this had gone on, and they did nothing about it either. And in fact, he was so frustrated that he wrote specifically to the chairman, said, what are you going to do about this? And he didn't even get a reply. OK, fascinating. Gordon, thank you so much. Gordon Rayner there, Associate Editor at The Telegraph, who broke that story. Let me bring in my panel now this evening. Political analyst Eric Ham is with us and political consultant Thomas Corbett-Dillon. Thomas, let me start with you as our Brit living in America. Just your reaction, first of all. I mean, we all know that the BBC gives a distorted view. It's never
it's always quite sneery about Donald Trump. Even if they fall short of actually overtly criticising him, they will never be complimentary about him. So this doesn't come as a huge surprise. But actually, to see that level of manipulation in an edit on a programme as journalistically credible as Panorama, I still think is shocking.
Yes, I mean, it's surprising the amount of reviews that would have gone through before it went on air, that no one, you could be excused for saying a junior editor thought this would make it better, let's do that. But someone should have picked that up before it went out. But I think the BBC are in big trouble. Look, I would put money that the president is going to sue them. He is currently he's suing the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, which of course owns Fox News, which is, his favorite channel. He is willing to sue his favorite channel, or the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by Rupert, for $10 billion right now because they put out the birthday card that he wrote to Epstein. He is going to sue the BBC. The only thing that I wonder is it's in England, so it makes things a little bit more complicated. It's easier to sue here, but I'm pretty sure he's very happy. He's suing Rupert, which is a good friend. He's going to sue the BBC if he can.
Do you think he will, Eric? And if he does, what will motivate him?
I think he will, and I think the reason he will is because we've already seen massive American media companies capitulate to Donald Trump. As you mentioned, CBS and ABC, and now he's suing the Wall Street Journal, which I don't think he's going to win that lawsuit. In fact, I think they're doubling down, particularly on the Epstein situation. But again, I think this is all much ado about nothing. We saw Donald Trump was actually impeached as a result of January 6th. We saw that charges were brought as a result of January 6th, and we saw over 100 people actually found guilty for their participation in January 6th. So what the BBC did or was alleged to have done with the splicing of Donald Trump's comments, it does not in any way, I think, exonerate Donald Trump for actually leading an insurrection against the U.S. government.
But to what extent was that impeachment based on politicians watching clips over and over again? Most likely that clip, because the whole point is you didn't have to watch Panorama to see that. That will have been tweeted and posted and reposted, and it builds a noise and it builds a narrative that maybe was just never there.
I think we need to remember that those lawmakers were actually under siege and their lives were in danger. And we know that police officers were killed. We know that there were additional people who were killed as a result of this. And of course, we know that the vice president himself believed that his life was actually in jeopardy as a direct result of some of the things that Donald Trump was tweeting at the time that it was actually happening. So I don't think what the BBC did has anything to do with what took place on January 6th. That, I think, is directly a response and directly because of Donald Trump's actions.
OK, all right. I'm sure our viewers at home will let me know what you think. WokeGBnews.com/your say. The BBC have given us a statement and they have said, while we don't comment on leaked documents, when the BBC receives feedback, it takes it seriously and considers it carefully. Michael Prescott is a former advisor to a board committee where differing views and opinions of our coverage are routinely discussed and debated.